All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the 4A podcast. I'm here with Brad, Steves, and Aiden. We'll be recapping the awards for the MLB. How you guys doing today?
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going, everybody?
So today we voted on who we thought would win Manager of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, and MVP. We did our own little votology. We have our own notes, and we're going to break it down and discuss why we voted where and who won our awards. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see our lovely PowerPoint presentation with our faces for the first time. And if you're listening to the podcast app, just continue here and enjoy the episode. So starting off, we went with the American League Manager of the Year. So American League this year was very top and bottom heavy. In the wild card contention, there was really the Orioles and then the two teams that made it, and the Red Sox were way out of it. At the top, we kind of expected the Astros to be there. What did you guys think about just how the teams performed this year and what the influence those managers had on them?
I think that the teams, there was a few teams that we didn't expect to be so good. The Guardians being Exhibit A. I think the Guardians were supposed to be a 500 team. A lot of people were questioning whether they would even be at 500. And honestly, the Orioles too, being a team that were questioned to be at 500 or above. I think both of those managers deserve the highest praise, but I did end up choosing Hyde, the Orioles manager, for the AL Manager of the Year for that reason, because they were projected to be so bad, and they had been so bad, and he seems to have turned them around.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's also like when I did my predictions for this year, I was sitting like the 60 win Orioles. We're looking here and they went 84 and 78, like best record in a long time since 2017. Like Brandon Hyde like he may not be the sole proprietor of their increase in performance, but you got to give credit to where credit's due, and Brandon Hyde deserves that. That was my vote as well.
Aiden, what do you think about that?
No, I mean definitely I think Hyde, took those Orioles that, weren't supposed to be, in playoff contention quite yet. And made them into playoff contention. And I think a rough stretch at the end of the year from, making it to the wild card. But for my first place I chose Dusty. Just because of how well, I mean, they were just simple. They were just the top seed in the AL. A couple years ago, he took over. He came in, tried to settle the dust, and he's doing just that. And this year, is a good example of 108 wins, I think, for a manager. And I think if you get 108 wins, you deserve to at least be in the talk.
So how much of that do you think is the team versus him? Because the Astros, like they were expected to be this team.
Yeah. But I also think, you have a team, but if you have a team with an awful manager, I managing plays into that in some aspect, even if it's not managing the game and if it's just having a team's back, in the talk. The guys love you, you're having fun more than being that strict, hard, hard on them coach that you only win maybe 90 games. But looks like Steves, your pick?
Well, I was right there with you. I went with Dusty. It's just, yeah, everyone expected Houston to be good, but I think what Dusty has done for that organization, he came in a time of kind of turmoil, coming in right after all the drama with the trash cans and all that, right? And he came in, he kind of settled it down, and this season I think was kind of the season where his hard work kind of paid off, and I think we saw it in the regular season. He had a lot of wins and as a team, and I think that, yeah, a lot of it is the players, but a lot of it's the players and on every team, right? Like the Orioles, you want to say Hyde did a lot of it, but what the players do on the field at the end of the day is going to be what makes or breaks a team, and who puts out the players on the field, that's going to be the manager.
So like the way I would counter that with the Hyde argument it like saying that Hyde deserves it more than Dusty is that or he's been through like the thick of it with that Orioles team. When Dusty took over, the Astros were already good. Like they were still a good team. Brandon Hyde went through the 48 in whatever 112 year they had. Like they were worse than a replacement level team statistically. And Brandon Hyde was there for that. And now he's still here with the team. He's when they've gone through it and he's here to coach them to show them like, hey, we've been to battle and now it's our turn.
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with that, and that's why I have him on my top 30 definitely. Um, but even though you have a good team, they were coming through one of the biggest scandals in MLB of the cheating, the wires, trash cans, anything. He comes in, doesn't let that bother him, doesn't, just talks to team, says, hey, let's not, and for these past, whatever years, including this year, and 108 wins or whatever, they haven't put that to them and let that take them down. They've been right there, and I think that's that has to do with the manager. I feel like if you brought in a new manager, and this is his first ever job going into Houston where they just had the allegations, I don't think they do as well as Dusty has done, especially this year.
I can see where that's coming from. Like I do think Dusty Baker like is deserving of some praise for his job in stabilizing that team. It's just when he came in, he never had that direct effect of the cheating from him. He was the outside person coming in to maintain that. It would have been a different story if it was someone from within containing that issue.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was just, more saying that he kind of had to come in and just clean up the whole mess, get
Yeah.
it back, get it straight, put them on the right path of playing, if it is clean baseball. But like sweeping it up, letting them play clean baseball, getting them back on their feet, and pushing them, and especially this season.
All right, so we're ready to see who the winner is.
Hmm.
All right, so your 2022 American League Manager of the Year is Brennan Hyde.
Shocking.
It is.
He deserves it. Like he was there when it was the worst. Like this Orioles team was horrible, and this year they finally came back. Like there's a lot to point at, like the analytics taking over. They're funny enough, Astros, like a lot of the Astros front office is now with the Orioles, like the analytics helping the pitching and, stars rising like Adley Rutschman, especially the rookies this year. Like their rookies had a great role with Brandon Hyde guiding them the way. So if you want to see our vote breakdown, this is how the votes they came out. Brandon Hyde won with 16 points. Dusty Baker 13. Scott Service was actually right there with Dusty Baker with 12. And then Francona and Cash each getting a couple points of their own. Anything out here surprise you guys?
Yeah, I would say Francona just because this is a team. I mean, I'll say it a million times. My grandpa's a Guardians fan, so I ride with them. But this team was not supposed to be good. This team was in fact supposed to be a below 500 team, and they definitely brought in a lot of young players and kind of surprised the whole league. And I mean, they went on a little bit of a run, but they didn't go too far in the playoffs. But the fact that they finished above 500 and won the division is bizarre. And I think Francona was a big part of that.
Yeah.
I'm right there with Tom. In all honesty, I had Francona at 2. I do agree. I think Hyde did very good, and in this season, I do think he definitely deserves to win it. But I think all three of the managers that the Francona, Hyde, and Dusty were all kind of are all pretty similar, right? They're all very good in their own respects, and but Francona has led this kind of young team, and it was the youngest in the postseason this year, and he led them through the regular season and put them in good situations to win, and they played very well in the playoffs, but and they fell short in the playoffs, but I think Francona deserves to be talked about more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I would personally bring up Kevin Cash of not somebody I would bring up, but more maybe bring down. I'm kind of surprised, he got a vote, just because it's like I don't, I don't know. He's one of those guys that, you kind of have a reasoning for all four. And then Kevin Cash, who was, I mean, lower end of the six or five we have here.
I think
Um,
if you're looking solely at results, then yes, I think it's easy to say Kevin Cash was a bit of a disappointment. But I
Yeah.
think at what he was dealt with this team that he dealt with this season, he really the Tampa Bay Rays on paper, I mean every year and especially this year, were lacking in talent. Sure, there was a lot of stars in that lineup, but they were hurt most of the year. There's a lot of injuries you had to deal with, and to keep a team moving like, I mean, this is the guy who's proved year after year that he knows what he's doing and he deserves a spot there. I don't think that you can say after a first round exit in the playoffs and not winning the division that he's a bad manager and that he didn't deserve.
No, 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 no. And I wouldn't say that, but the Rays almost always, they're kind of known for having these iffy teams, that, they go to the playoffs. But this team, in my opinion, Kevin Cash has had better teams, and like better records. And it's sorry, not better teams, but just better records. Like all the teams have kind of been these lower end players, making a bigger name out of them. But I felt like this one had a little more star power, and more names than we're kind of used to for the Rays.
See, I disagree with you there because Wander Franco was out for a majority of the year. Like you look at
Oh
their
well, yeah,
starting.
yeah. Oh yeah, you have injuries, and obviously but like I'm talking like a fully like healthy team, I would say had
No,
more
he
star
had
power
at
than.
most like during the thick of the season, they had 16 people on the IL. Like Kevin Cash, their starting rotation was Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, Corey Kluber, and insert Phil starter here. Like Jeffrey Springs in the end, like he was good, but before the season, who the hell is Jeffrey Springs? Like you have these people who we don't know. That's kind of the Rays, like their thing. But Glassnow was out the whole year, and that's a huge blow to the Tampa Bay Rays. And Kevin Cash was able to manage that bullpen and manage that starting rotation throughout the whole year and still get them into a playoff spot.
Yeah, but I also feel like that's Kevin Cash for you, like Kevin Cash is going to find a way to get his team to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But
And so, like looking at getting to the playoffs, we move to our National League Manager of the Year. Um, I thought here that like the National League managers were really good this year. You had Buck Showalter who came in and he finally got that Mets team to the playoffs. He glued them together finally. I think there was some help from Max Scherzer there. You had Bob Melvin who got the Padres to a winning record in a 162 game season. You had Rob Thompson that got them into the playoffs. Like there were some good managers here this year. What do you guys think?
I think that Showalter was definitely the solution for the Mets. I think halfway through the season, while the Mets were in a great position, no one actually thought the Mets would pull through. We all thought the Mets were going to Met, they were going to choke, that they were going to lose, and they did. They did, but I think we all thought they would lose a chance at the playoffs, and I think for that reason, their dominance kind of lasted throughout the whole season up until the very end. Rob Thompson comes in a trash situation. This Phillies team really was struggling at the time of his arrival, and he also turned them around. And I think that was a huge impact on the whole team chemistry and everything around it. And Bob Melvin in my third place spot, I got to give it to him just because the Padres have never been a team that keeps momentum going. They really struggle with that. We saw that last year. They had burnout. This year they tried to burn out a couple times, but they managed to pull through and they made it to the NLCS, which is crazy, but that's not something we're taking into consideration. And for that reason, I chose Buck Showalter because he led the Mets, who weren't necessarily thought of to be like the team, and led them to a 100 win season.
yeah, no, I personally, I for first place I had Rob Thompson. Thompson, just because I look at where the Phillies were. They were, I believe, below 500. Already had nothing on them, and then you call up, bring him up. He's been with the team forever. You bring up Rob, um, and he kind of just takes that team to, I mean, what it is now. And I know we're only looking at the regular season, so third place, but so, making the playoffs after that start, is incredible. Obviously, we can't look at postseason, but what he has done in the postseason has also been, really incredible. But that's why I have.
Um, I was right there with Aiden again. I had Rob Thompson. I do like Buck Showalter. He was my pick at the beginning of the year, who I thought was going to win Manager of the Year. But I just think, yeah, he managed them to a great season. And when Tom says the Mets are going to Met, right? They did, right? They fell out of they didn't win the NL East, and they fell out in the wild card. Um, they couldn't have fallen out of the wild card completely because the Phillies made it. So if they dropped under the Phillies, they still would have made it, right? Um, it, uh, I do like what Buck Showalter did there in New York, but I can't give it to him when what the Mets collapse that the Mets had, right? So I had Rob Thompson winning. What he did for the Phillies coming in after Girardi was fired, and he really picked up the pieces and put this team back together and put them on the right path. And I think he's definitely deserving of Manager of the Year.
I definitely think he's deserving of some credit to it, but you have to recognize the fact that the Phillies, like, they played a game of who can lose less with the Brewers. It wasn't who could win more, it was who could lose less. And that's how they made it into the postseason. I think you guys are also calling the Mets collapse. It wasn't that. The Mets played 95 win baseballs when they had that 10 game lead on the Braves, they played 95 win baseball for the rest of the year. The thing was, the Braves played 114 win baseball in that stretch, and the Braves caught up. The Mets didn't collapse. They played good baseball. And Buck Showalter got them to play through the entire season. You forget this is a 100-win team. Like, I understand they didn't win the division, and I understand their wild card fortunes weren't great, but Buck Showalter managed to get this Mets team that faltered and barely made it through last season, and he got it to be a 100-win team. So that's why my vote fell with him. And my second place vote was Bob Melvin. I think Bob Melvin, you looked at the difference between last year's Padres team and this year's. Like, first of all, obviously, like, one of them had Tatis, one didn't last year, and that was the team that was below 500. This year, this team is a mid 80s win team or high 80s win team who, they're going to give you a hard time because of that pitching rotation. But they had so many opportunities, the Tatis suspension, as you guys mentioned, to fall apart. They had injuries happen throughout the year and they stayed in it. And I think Bob Melvin has a lot to do with that.
I definitely agree. I did like Bob Melvin. He was on my ballot. And I do like what he did with the Padres. They did trade for superstars, right? They traded for Soto, they got Bell, they got Josh Hader, and I think that definitely helped. But I think Bob Melvin did a very good job at keeping this team on track, and they did end up getting to the championship series in the NL, which I think is even more credit to him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had Bob Melvin at number two as well. I think mainly for the fact of what he did, without, I mean, going into the season, it's kind of, I mean, you have the star pieces, but like that, like almost angel at the top would, be Tatis. Like that's how, like he's one of these, I'd say one of these three superstars with him, Acuna and Soto to be the faces of the MLB, and to be without him, for this basically the whole season, and still do what he did, I think is crazy. And I mean, I think we didn't do one, but I think if we did have an executive of the year, it, in the top three would definitely be the Padres GM.
That's fair. All right. So you've heard our spiels. And now to reveal manager of the year in the National League, it's Rob Thompson. If we look at our voting distribution, Rob Thompson beat out Bob Melvin by 3 votes with 17. Melvin had 14, and Buck Showalter had 13. Brian Snitker getting an errant vote there. Stevs, you want to explain that Snitker vote?
I gave it to Snicker just because he did end up winning the NL East, and that was one of the toughest divisions to win this year. He pushed past, and he did. There was a lot that the Braves had. I think it definitely just came down to it was Showalter or it was Snicker, and it could have gone either way. In my eyes, and I think Snicker just I think the NL East win pushed him over in my eyes.
And then Tom, what do you think about this?
I don't know if you can. This is a conversation about managers, not team success. I think Stevs that Brian Snicker had the much more talented and much more like I would say have better chemistry. They've been playing together for a lot longer than this.
I'll give you the chemistry.
So I'm saying that I think Showalter's a better manager in the sense that he's done virtually exactly what Snicker did, except for win the division, obviously. But that's a 1 game difference that we're talking. So
Right.
I don't know. I think at the beginning of the season I predicted the Braves to win the East, and they ended up winning the East, but by 1 game. And the fact that the Mets put up such a good fight with a relatively new team, like new team in the sense of signing a bunch of free agents, a lot of new changes to the team chemistry. It's hard to immediately see success from that, and they were somehow.
Well, I can see that, but at the same time, if you're paying what I think the Mets have the second highest payroll, you kind of expected them to, not necessarily win the division, and obviously they put up a really good fight. But I think they had it for so long that you almost kind of expected them to just keep that push
They
and just
should have had
keep
it.
keep rolling. And I think they should have had it, because they're kind of going up, and then I mean, it wasn't even that big of like a decline because they didn't really decline, like Brad said. They kind of just went up and then they kind of just like coasted towards the finish line where the Braves never really stopped. But the Mets had, I think, like I just said, the second highest payroll, only behind the Dodgers.
They had the highest
And
payroll.
did they have? Yeah, so they had the highest payroll. In baseball, you can't really say, oh, because they're all new to each other. Like, I mean, that's still, again, the highest payroll, and you had all season and, spring training and the off season. Other teams had really big free agent signings, and I think they did more with.
So I could see that. Brad, what do you think about that? Because I'm curious what you got to say on that.
So I think that we do have a little bit of bias in the fact that we're voting in the postseason and we can see what the Phillies have done. And I
Yeah.
think that really magnifies what Rob Thompson
But
did.
but
Sebs, yours.
even now the voters will vote in the postseason, so they will have
Like,
they'll
yeah,
have the same biases, right?
yeah, I feel like Steph is onto something. Like, they can all say, okay, we're only looking at regular season,
But
but like,
voters
let's
vote
just
the day
say,
after the season ends.
Do they actually?
Yes.
Okay.
All votes are submitted the day after the season ends.
but it comes out now.
Yeah.
Tom, shut the fuck up.
Yes? We have to get that up. Kids.
All right. So now going on to Brad. What's next?
We
Drum
have
roll.
American League Rookie of the Year.
Woo!
Okay, so
This is about to be
with
a war.
this, it was down to two people. Like there are some really good seasons on the outside, like Felix Bautista, great rookie campaign. Johan Duran, just hear me out here. He had the highest championship win probability added of any American League player besides Aaron Judge. Like I know that's a weird stat to bring up, but I think that's something really impressive to see out of a rookie reliever in a bullpen. Like props to him. But when it comes to the three top horses in my eyes, like Bobby Witt, good season. It comes down to Stephen Kwan, Adley Rutschman, Julio Rodriguez. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, no, as I'm looking at it right now, I think most of us really had a similar 1, 2, 3. And I mean, I think just Julio at number one for me is kind of a no-brainer. I mean, you did have a really tough fight by Adley, making it closer than I think we all thought because Adley played, I think, less time. I believe that, a lot less time. Um, And Julio, did he finish the 2020? I think he
Huh?
did, right?
He got 2020, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, 2020 in the rookie season, um, kind of jolted that Mariners offense. Without him, they kind of looked a little sluggish. Especially but I don't know. I feel like he kind of gave that team the energy it needed. He was always there. So I'm thinking more of on the side of, I don't want to say like chemistry, but like he gave him energy, and that 2020 obviously is.
I think you're really discrediting how good that Mariners team was. Eugenio Suarez had a great season. Cal Raleigh was good. Julio Rodriguez, like big impact. He played an okay center field, but it really like he didn't make or break that team. There were so many horses on that team that were good. Like Julio Rodriguez added a little bit to that, but he was not this make or break of the Mariners offense that you say he is. I think Adley Rutschman, if you look at him compared to Julio Rodriguez, Adley Rutschman had 398 at bats. Julio Rodriguez had 511. Fangraphs rates them out evenly in F4. Baseball Reference favors Julio Rodriguez a little bit, but that also favors Fangraphs is more prone to favoring, more plate appearances, something like that. Or sorry, Baseball Reference favors more plate appearances, something like that, quality over plate appearances. So by that same theory, if Adley Rutschman had had that same amount of plate appearances, his Baseball Reference WAR would have shown up to be exactly the same.
Now here's a quick question. Do you think if they swapped roles, like just swapped teams,
No,
do you think Baltimore would have made the playoffs?
no, because Cedric Mullins was a fantastic center fielder.
Well, obviously, you'd play, I don't know, Julio and DH left or right or whatever, but do you think
Yeah,
like
he'd play
just
over
his bat?
Santander probably.
Yeah, like do you think his bat would have led him to the playoffs?
No, because I think you would have lost Adley Rutschman, who when Adley Rutschman debuted in the middle of May, I believe it was around May 20th, the Orioles to the rest of the season were the best team in the American League East. That didn't happen for the Mariners with Julio Rodriguez coming up at the beginning of the year. They were at no point in the season that best team in the American League West. The American League West, a less competitive division than the American League East, where Adley Rutschman brought the Orioles to fourth place, borderline a playoff spot, where he caught when he was the only productive catcher. Robinson Chirinos graded out as the worst framing catcher in all of baseball. So we have to add that into there. And for Adley Rutschman to be catching 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4 days, produce offensively as a switch hitter, that is something that I believe is more valuable than a center fielder who is going to be one of the faces of baseball. I don't disagree with that, but I think Adley Rutschman was more valuable than Julio Rodriguez.
Steph?
I honestly agree with Brad. I think Adley was more valuable, but I don't. This is a individual award, right? It's not like like
Like
MVP,
team
right? You
success.
but like MVP, right? You kind of do have to weigh in how valuable they were to the team success, stuff like that. Rookie of the year, you don't have to do that, right? It's more just primarily focused on the player and what they
I think
do.
Yeah,
it's
I
more
guess
open to your
you could you
definition of MVP, though.
And I,
Yeah,
well, but
like,
I
that's
feel
fair. That's fair.
like,
That's fair.
yeah, but I feel like you can have a rookie of the year on the worst team in the league, but you can't have an MVP on the worst team in the league.
Yes, you can.
Exactly.
Mike Trout's won it 3 times.
Yeah,
I,
but the Angels aren't the worst team in the league. Is
They're
Yeah,
what I
one
think
of the
what Aiden
worst.
think. They are less
Miami
than
Marlins. You have
500.
Sandy Alcantara competing for the Cy Young
but
later.
but it's not. It's like if you look at like hitting,
And again, that's a
they just
different
need
award too.
pitching. Like, yeah.
Also,
um, I,
Tom, you go.
I'm gonna have to pick J Rod. I mean, you don't have a guy that, first of all, didn't play in every game this season. I mean, I know most players don't, but he missed 30 games this season, and I can confidently say that if he played those 30 extra games, he would have hit 30-30 season in his rookie season, which has only been done, I think, 3 times. I don't know the exact
Yeah.
number, but that's just not something that happens. Mix that in, he's probably going to be competing for a Gold Glove too. He's a full package. He's a 5 tool.
Oh, I don't know about that because his Fangraphs defense grades out slightly negative.
Yeah, he's not like a Kevin Kiermaier type, but like he's definitely someone I would want to have in my center field. He covers a lot of ground. And I think that also weighs into the defense. You know, someone slower won't have those negative attributes. A lot of that goes into the statistics. Like a slower person, Aiden, let me explain this to you. If a slower person, if they don't get to the ball, they won't get counted as an error. But if someone super fast gets to that ball, that wouldn't be contested by someone slower. It would be counted as an error. So weighing those things in, someone that can cover a lot of ground, it's a lot more valuable. And the thing I'm really talking about is the bat here. This guy hits for power. He's hit something around 280, 284. I mean, this guy, and he's fast on the bases too. I mean, if there was a redraft for the MLB, I think for this draft class, only for this draft class, and you had to draft all these rookies, I think the first rookie to go would be Julio Rodriguez, just because of his value. I think that having a fast having a 5-tool center fielder on your team is the best thing you can have even over a catcher.
So you mentioned that he graded out better offensively than Rutschman. And if you look at weighted on base average, WOBA, it's kind of like, for those that don't know, it's the best version of on base percentage, because it's saying that a single is not 2 times less valuable than a double. It actually weights them based on how much run probability they add on this thing called the expected run matrix. And so it's basically saying that like a walk is 0.72, a single's around 1.2, a double's 1.9, not an actual 2, and it grades it on that scale. So Julio Rodriguez's WOBA was 366 and Adley Rutschman was 354. There's a little bit of an increase for Julio Rodriguez. And the thing I want to look at is the expected WOBA. I know expected stats can more explain what's going to happen in the future, but they're good to look back and see, okay, this is what the guy actually did, but this is kind of what he was supposed to be. And Julio Rodriguez actually drops almost 30 points in his WOBA, into his expected WOBA at 337, where Rutschman increases to a 342, better than Julio Rodriguez. That's out of a catcher.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting because I know advanced statistics will tell you that Adley's better, and I think that they're right there with each other. I really hate picking a side here because I'm an Adley supporter, but another really important thing is sample size. And if had Adley started at the beginning of the season, we'd probably be able to see more of Adley and more of his potential. But in the sample size we got to see, we're looking at someone that is extremely valuable. And honestly, if he had played the whole season, he probably would have won the award. But I think the main thing that sets people apart, sets players apart, is the big counting stats, the ones that aren't necessarily like advanced stats, like home runs, doubles, RBI. And I know that Adley hits more doubles, but he doesn't hit the long ball that often. He gets on base a ton, which I don't know. This could go either way. I'm literally creating arguments for both sides in my head, and I cannot make up my mind on this one. But I think just the fact that Julio was close to a 30-30, I don't know. I think that's the decider for me.
Yeah, real fast, Stebbs. What did you have?
So as I was saying, it's really 1A and 1B. If you could give the award to both of them, I think both of them deserve it, and I don't think anyone would really argue with it. But I went with Julio Rodriguez as well. I just think what he did for the Mariners it's a culture changer, right? Like Adley on the Orioles, yeah, it's cool. There's a whole new energy there, but the energy around Julio Rodriguez and in center field is just something you can't explain, right? It's amazing. The stats are there for both of them. Everything else is there for both of them. The tangibles are there, but Julio Rodriguez is just on another planet, in my opinion.
Yeah, all right. Well then, I think with 3 first place votes, I think we have a American League Rookie of the Year winner.
Julio Rodriguez, American League Rookie of the Year. I'm not
I think,
surprised by this. Like, I
yeah.
think this is what is actually going to happen, but I think Adley Rutschman deserves more credit than he's getting right now.
Oh,
He
100%.
definitely
No,
does.
I think Seb said it right, actually. It's kind of 1A and 1B. Yeah, I mean, it's 19, 17, 9, 3. No, I definitely think Stebbs, said it actually perfectly. Is 1A, 1B. I think Julio is like probably like a smidge higher. But it could go either way.
Tom, you voted for
I
Bobby Witt Jr. over Stephen Kwan.
think I meant to click that one. I'm not gonna lie, I filled this out and I don't remember clicking Bobby Witt. But I'm gonna argue for him. Okay, I'm gonna argue. I think this guy resembles Mike Trout at shortstop. He has a oddly similar swing. He's going to hit for power. I'm convinced that in his career he's going to be more valuable than Kwan. But this year alone, talking about statistics, yes, Stephen Kwan is the better player. But
No, I
I
totally see that.
someone that's going to hit a 30-30 season in the next 2 years, maybe even a 40-40. This guy is extremely fast and
Yeah.
has a lot of, so I don't, yeah, that's my
And
take.
Ah,
I didn't see much of with this season. Is he at least a good defender?
He's solid. Like
Solid.
a
Like
lot of
I
this
didn't I
rookie
didn't see him
class can
making.
play good
Yeah,
defense. Like
yeah,
Steven Quad is like he's a right-in for left field Gold Glove. Adley Rutschman, if he had more time behind the plate, probably competing for that Gold Glove for catchers. But that's the
yeah,
thing with the American League catchers is that so many of them are defensive oriented that it's going to be more difficult for him to stand out as a defensive star.
yeah. All right. Well, moving now. I'm assuming to NL Rookie of the Year.
it's a good
Again,
guess, I think.
another two-horse race. We got Spencer Strider and Michael Harris the second. Or Michael Harris too, excuse me. This it's a really different clash here because you have two people who came up in the middle of the year, and Spencer Strider had been up the whole year. He started in the bullpen, and then he transitioned to a starter. I personally think this is the most even race out of anything we have. I think this is even more even than the American League Rookie of the Year because there's because in the American League we can compare position players. Here we're comparing a pitcher and a center fielder. A center
Yeah.
fielder who's playing the Braves' best center field since Andrew Jones in the 1990s, who's hitting for power. He's running well. Like Michael Harris, he got the 8-year, $72 million extension. And he got Spencer Strider, the fastest pitcher to 200 strikeouts in the season. Like this, and they're all on the same team. They're on the same team.
I hate the Braves.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true Nats
Yep.
fan.
Yep. Signing him cheap. If you don't mind, I'll start off because I'm the only one who actually went with Michael Harris. I think everybody else went with Strider. I mean, to be honest, he hit amazingly. But on top of that, he played. Uh, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, Brad. Correct me if I'm wrong. He played elite defense.
Oh, he did.
I mean, he's like you said, Andy Jones, but I mean that was one of the best defensive rookie seasons. I mean, we've seen. I swear, every time I turned on the TV, once a week or whatever, he's there making a diving catch, a good throw, a leaping grab, a robbing a home run. So I think just playing elite defense while batting really good, it just put him over the edge for me. But Strider is definitely number two for me. Just like the AL 1A 1B.
Yeah, I think these two are so close to each other that third place is probably like 8 levels behind. I mean, you really
Yeah, yeah,
that. I chose Strider for Rookie of the Year just because when you think about it, these are two different positions. This is starting position. This is a pitcher, and this is a position player. You can argue Strider for Cy Young. He's not going to win, but you can argue him for Cy Young. But you can't argue Michael Harris for MVP.
I don't
And I
think
know
that's a fair comparison of
yeah,
awards.
yeah,
what about like
yeah.
Silver. I mean, I don't know what's the equivalent to the Cy Young.
You don't really. I feel like you don't really have one. It's not like there's like an outfielder of the year award. I mean, I feel like it's much harder to win MVP than Cy Young because you can win Cy Young, but that doesn't mean you win MVP too. Even
Yeah,
though there are some players in that conversation.
being the best at your position. I mean, when you're the best pitcher in the league, you win Cy Young. When you're the best player in the league, you win MVP. I mean, it's possible
Yeah,
for a pitcher, to be, but you know what I'm saying. I think
yeah,
conversation to be one of the best pitchers in the game right now. Michael Harris in the NL is probably in the top 15 players. And it's easier to argue Strider for one of the best pitchers in the league than Harris for the best position player in the league.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for that reason I chose Strider. I mean, this is just two extremely dominant seasons from both players. It's close, but I think you have to give it to Strider. But I'm curious what you gotta say, Stabs. What do you gotta say on this one?
I want to Strider too. It's just like he pitched. How many innings did he pitch? He pitched 131.
131.2.
Yeah. And he had a 267 ERA, which I know isn't Brad's favorite stat, but it is something that you have to talk about, right? I do also agree with Tom's point. Strider is within a higher echelon of pitchers this year, right? Than Harris was within center fielders or position players or whatever you want to say, right? I think that has a lot to say about it. And I think Strider was just I do agree. I don't think it was as 1A, 1B as Aiden is saying, but I think it was kind of it was 1-2. I in my opinion, but I did go with Strider. I like what he did on the mound for the Braves, and it felt kind of like a spark plug in their rotation when they needed kind of a staple.
Yeah, I also just like the personality of Spencer Strider.
That too.
Like Spencer Strider's like a guy. Is it like, do you get that? Like Spencer Strider is a character on the mound. Like Quadzilla gonna come in, be a little cocky in his press conference, but it's gonna be fun. And something that's very simple to look at, like it's very difficult to cross compare a pitcher stats with a player stats. Because the thing I like to look at, everyone doing that, is like win probability added. And Spencer Strider, he added more simply than Michael Harris. I also think it's easier for a starting pitcher to take over a game. And there are plentiful examples of Spencer Strider just taking over the game compared to Michael Harris, where he may hit a home run or two, but there's still, or steal a big base, make a big defensive play. But there's still so much more that has to happen around him, where I'm still just going to be more prone to pick a pitcher over a player.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And so
I do
with
want
that,
to add.
sorry.
I do want to add real quick. Tomorrow is Spencer Strider's birthday. Hey, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Stabs.
Happy
You're
Spencer
welcome.
Day.
Happy Spencer Day.
No, but I think we had you three had Spencer at number 1. And then I had Michael Harris, and then vice versa. I had started at 2. You guys had Michael Harris at 2. And number 3, we kind of split up a little. I believe I personally went with a 30-year-old rookie, Joey Meneses.
Hold on, Aiden. Let's let Brad go through his slides real quick.
Oh, okay. Without further ado, your NL Rookie of the Year, Spencer Strider.
Yeah, I mean, when you have 3-1, I thought it was kind of
It is,
clear,
but you got it's the theatrics.
There we go.
So it was close, like same voting distribution as Rutschman versus Julio. 1917 Strider to Harris. And then we had three unique players go for third place. Aiden, you were getting into the 30-year-old rookie.
Yeah, no, I mean, what he did is crazy. I mean, the whole season he played, I don't believe he went under a 300 batting average. And he played in 45 games, 50 games, something like that. He gave the Nats the first walk-off. Even though that's more like a sad stat. But no, I mean, at 30 years old, all that time in the minor leagues to come up and bat the way he did, he definitely deserves a spot on the team next year, and I think he will.
Yeah. I mean, I also voted Joey Meneses in third place. Mine was simply the Nats traded away Juan Soto, and the guy that replaced him played better. I found that kind of funny. I didn't think the National League rookie pool was as strong as the American Leagues outside of the top 2. I think the other 2 players here, like Stevs, Tom, I'll talk about them in a second. I think they had respectable rookie seasons. Like they're going to be good MLB players. It's just nothing really stood out to me. That's why I think getting the 30-year-old rookie some like recognition while he's going to be here is necessary.
Real quick before Thomas does go, does anybody know the favorite to win in the
In the NL,
before the season?
Uh, before the season.
Probably
Yeah,
Suzuki.
like before
probably was Seiya.
Suzuki.
It was either it was probably I think it was
Yeah,
because
no,
he was coming in as kind of more of a mature type of guy, right? Coming out
Yeah.
of Japan.
yeah. Stats. Who was your third place?
Well, so I did go with Seiya Suzuki. I like what he did in Chicago. He batted 262. Uh, nothing again, like Brad said, none of the stats kind of were really eye popping, to me in any one way. I did look at Meneses, but it's just I don't feel like he played long. Like he obviously played long enough to be considered as a rookie, but I don't think he played long enough for me to vote for him in the top 3 of rookie of the year. That's kind of where I differentiated that.
Yeah, and to build on that, I think that I'm very fond on, especially for these awards, you need to have a good sample size. You could have someone. I mean, I'm someone like for the 10 games of the season, I like to look at the leaders and average and everything. I'm like, oh man, they're batting 800. That's crazy. It's been 10 games. You're here for 40 games. You're amazing, but can you keep that up for 162 straight? You don't have to do that, obviously, but keep it up for most of the season. It's tough to vote for someone that hasn't proven it long enough. And I think that Brendan Donovan isn't the most flashy player of all time. I will admit that, but he was someone who stayed consistent and played a lot of baseball this season. And for that reason, I think I had to vote him as my third. And it wasn't the most interesting player, but it was someone definitely consistent. Is Brad back
Yeah,
yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
no,
Sorry, I
and
was taking a leak.
no, no, real fast. Joey Meneses actually had 56 games played. That's actually more than I thought. So.
I thought it was around 50, so
Yeah, that makes
that's
sense.
not
Yeah,
terrible.
I
But
thought it was more
it's just
yeah.
again, it's still I just need a bigger sample size for me to consider him top 3. I'll give him top 5. I do agree. I think he top 5 is debatable.
I think for Joey, since he is 30, it'll be interesting to see what he does next year. Assuming he plays,
I
assuming he
don't
gets
know
a
if he'll
starting.
be in Washington next year. I'm gonna be honest.
He's a free agent, so
He is a free agent.
yeah.
Well,
So they could
next up.
re-sign him to
So
a
he
quick.
definitely
Yeah, they could
he
re-sign
will
him.
not be in Washington next year. He
No,
will go somewhere else.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him get that 1 year offer, and then if he's doing good at the deadline, they try and flip him to contender if
Yeah.
something like that.
What we do every year.
Yeah. All right. Next up.
We have the American League Cy Young Award, and honestly, this award, it's really interesting to me. This is our third highest contended award, like most unique people getting votes. It also happened to be one of the ones where we had 5 votes. For a quick explanation, we were able to vote for 5 people. First place would get 5 votes, second place, 4 points, etc., all the way down to 5th place getting 1 point. So that does open the door for more possible points and more possible people to get recognition. And something that was just really nice about the American League was I didn't think there was a clear-cut winner. I think there were clear-cut favorites, but there are just so many quality seasons in the American League. Like when I'm looking at the sheet that I made to like filter out when I look to filter out pitchers, anything of that nature, I had 14 people that could be in the conversation of getting Cy Young votes. That doesn't mean winning. It's just in the conversation. We had like breakout seasons such as like Nestor Cortez, Christian Javier, Shane McClanahan. We had the return of Shane Bieber, Martin Perez having his career year, Johnny Cueto at 37 coming in for the White Sox, Garrett Cole
Alec
was going
Manoah.
to be there. But I think my top 5, not in any particular order, Verlander, Cease, Manoah, Ohtani, and Clase. I will get into my order in a little bit, but what were your guys' thoughts?
I
On
love
just
how you put Class A. That's all I got to say first. But I believe we had a very similar top 5. I think my top 5 consists of Verlander, Cease, McClanahan, Shohei, and Class A. And I honestly want to go more into ordering when we actually see the results for the points so we can all talk about who we voted for in that order. But right now we should all just talk about who makes that top five, and those are my players. Aiden, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, no. Looking at the spreadsheet, three out of us had Verlander as the number one. Including me. I mean, I just how 37? Is that right?
Yes. 39,
Th
39.
Man,
Oh,
I was giving him some credit. 39 years old and doing what he did this season. I mean, I think that's just I I I think that just, recaps it all for me. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, this is. I remember over the course of the season. I mean, there were just these periods where we would text each other saying this person is the clear cut MVP. I mean, Cy Young, and then the next week it would be a different one, and it was mainly juggling between Verlander, Cease, and McClanahan the whole season. But then injuries started plaguing them, and then even more names started showing up, like Shohei and Manoah, and it just continued to change. And I mean, we'll talk about it in a second. But Status, give me your top five right now.
my top five went Verlander, Cease, Valdez, McClanahan, and Manoah. I really like Valdez, and I think he had a great season that we are underrating personally. But other than that, obviously Verlander and Cease, I feel are 1-2 in my opinion. I think Verlander edges Cease in multiple ways. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, what's good? I know, real quick, go back on Verlander, adding some more. I know Brad doesn't, particularly like ERA. But to be 18-4 with a 175 ERA the whole season at 39, I think is just incredible.
It's
Um,
175 innings too.
yeah. So, but going on it, Brad, you're number
So
one.
I was the one that didn't vote for Justin Verlander. And I didn't vote
Weren't
for
you?
Dylan Cease. And I didn't vote for Alek Manoah. My Cy Young vote was Shohei Ohtani. And I know that's like, why the guy with the least amount of innings out of your final six? I'm going to put Valdez was my number six. I think Class A edged him out just a little bit. The quality of relieving was just so high. You couldn't hit Emmanuel Clase. It's so difficult when you're getting 101-mile-an-hour cutters, either moving away from you or breaking your bat. He's just good. Like if I have a save situation or even like a high leverage situation and I need to put someone out there, I'm picking Emmanuel Clase. And I think that's a really fair statement to make. I went with Shohei Ohtani over Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease, and Alek Manoah. Alek Manoah led them in innings, but I think Alek Manoah was just a little like a tier below. Something that I really like to look at is a thing called CSW percentage, which is called strike plus whiff rate. It's telling you how often the pitcher will get a called strike or produce a swing and miss on his pitches. The two people with the lowest of that five were Justin Verlander and Alek Manoah. The highest one was Shohei Ohtani. He also plays to FIP the best of any of them. Justin Verlander and his pretty interchangeable. His WAR, Justin Verlander's on Fangraphs, very interchangeable. But the thing that broke it for me was the independent dominance. Shohei Ohtani striking out 11.8 people per inning compared to 9.5 for Justin Verlander with his skill independent ERA, which is like more focused on your quality of contact. It's a quality of contact version of fielding independent pitching. And Ohtani beat him by 36, like 0.36. The innings for me are a complete wash. They had the same number of starts. They both started 28 games. Verlander threw 175 innings to Shohei Ohtani's 166. For me, that's a wash. As long as Shohei qualified, that's a wash. And he did qualify, and he edges out Verlander, who was my number two. Like I will admit, great season. I just think Ohtani as the individual was better in his sample than Justin Verlander.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel like you can't really look at the amount of losses. I know that's kind of like a non like that high of a factor. But I also feel like going to Brad's number one is Shohei. I feel like if you put Shohei on the Astros, it's the record begins to look a lot more like Verlander. I think maybe even the ERA goes down a tiny bit.
Yeah, like he was someone that didn't outperform his expected ERA, which is very common. Like it's
Yeah.
very difficult to outperform your expected ERA. Normally, that's someone of an Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, who's just playing to a bad defense. And the Angels' defense was fine. The Astros' defense was really good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's going to benefit Verlander there. I think Dylan Cease and Alek Manoah had good seasons, but we can get into that in a second when we see the distribution. Do you guys have any final things to say before we see who won the American League Cy Young Award?
No, I
Nope.
think it's pretty
Hit it.
clear cut, but go ahead.
Justin Verlander takes home the Cy Young Award. Um, he did have a comeback year. Like there's a good story behind it, but I still got to say Shohei Ohtani was better in my eyes. And this is our voting breakdown.
Question: Do we think Verlander is ever going to slow down? I think this dude might be part robot.
No, he would. I think what gets neglected was Verlander was good throughout the 2010s, but this is better than he was then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's only getting better by age. He's like wine.
And so our voting distribution for those on the podcast who aren't seeing this, Justin Verlander wins with 19 votes. Dylan Cease in second place with 14. Shane McClanahan in third with 9, which I found really interesting because Shane McClanahan and Shohei Ohtani actually got the same amount of innings. It was just Shane McClanahan did not pitch to the same caliber that Shohei Ohtani did. Shohei Ohtani in fourth with 7, Valdez 5, Manoah 4, Clase 2.
Yeah, no, real quick. I'm not even gonna lie. I was really high on Valdez this year. I think I had him at number 3 or 4 for me. I mean, I just liked what he. I mean, he really made a name, like a huge name for himself this season as a top pitcher in the league in general.
I'm
mean-
curious to
Steph said
see
the same thing.
why or how you guys got McClanahan to so many points. Like who voted McClanahan here?
I put Monahan
Uh, I
and
had him at 4.
I think has started at the start of the season and up until maybe a couple weeks after the All-Star break. Brad, you were even pro Shea McClanahan.
Yeah.
I mean, he was definitely the most dominant pitcher in the league, and I think that everything is watered down just because of those last 2 or 3 starts. So everything doesn't look as pretty. And Shohei definitely stayed more, I guess, more consistent through the last couple games. But McClanahan, just you can't take away everything that he had at the beginning just because of a couple bad games at the end. And I know you can say that for anyone, but I think that
Yeah,
Shane's dominance lasted for most of the season, and it just so happened to be rough at the end.
yeah. No, we looking at it now. Tom had McClanahan at third. Stubbs had it in fourth, and honestly, I had him in second. Just again, I kind of more winged it, I think, than you guys did. But like Tom said, I think the beginning of the year played a huge impact for me. Looking at it now, I might have switched him, second and third flip flop to Cease. But I just he kind of carried that first half of the Rays, I feel like, and I think it was more of a him helping the team than him individually, if that makes sense.
So just to get clarification, like when you're voting Cy Young MVP, Aiden, you're looking
Mhm.
more help to the team, that type of value than just individual player value.
I mean, I think both play a factor, but I think I do think of helping the team more than I guess maybe a little more than you guys do. But obviously, yeah, individual plays a factor too. It's not like 90 helps a team 10, I think it's more like probably 60, 65, 70-ish for individual and about anywhere from 30 to 40 for team.
So with that, we're going to move on to the National League Cy Young Award, who it's a very simple thing. It's Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think
Clean sweep there.
yeah,
Clean
like
sweep. Oh,
he led the league in innings by almost 30 innings. You mentioned ERA. His ERA, nothing spectacular. His expected ERA, his FIP, just sitting just under 3. But it's just the simple dominance over so many innings. he's a classic starter. He comes out, he gives at least 7 innings, he keeps you in the game. He's the Cy Young winner. He's the best pitcher in the National League.
Yeah, we talked about the comparison between MVP and Cy Young. If there was a way to say this is the most valuable pitcher, then Sandy is that guy. He's not a valuable pitcher, but he's valuable to the entire team. When you can last 9 innings, when you can go the full game, that is more useful to a team than anything. And he just was simply so much better. Not even the fact that he's more dominant than all the other pitchers. It's just the fact that he could go longer. You don't see that often, and the fact that he lasted the whole season without many injuries. I know he had one, but he didn't. He lasted a long time without any injuries like that were severe enough to keep him out. I don't know. But like he lasted a long time, and he was consistent throughout the whole season, pretty much, other than maybe 2 or 3 bad games.
Are we good there, Steves and Aiden?
I'm good. Yeah, I agree. I think he lasted a while. No,
All right.
but I definitely agree. Sandy Alcantara was definitely in kind of a league of his own in the National League, right? I don't think anyone in the National League could even touch what he had from the start of the year to the end of the year, and he had a very consistent season through and through.
Yeah, no, I think real quick, if you look at it, I think the fact that that's not.
I think we need to take a second. I think we need to take Tom. What the fuck, dude?
What?
I think
you made it worse. You just kept going, and you made it worse and worse.
I think the fact that he's playing on Miami, I know when I say team success goes along with it. I think this is a really big one. Is he's playing on not that good of a team, besides the pitching, So I think that since he was able to just go in, play his game, really, like Tom said, last that long in Miami, is crazy to me. And I think that's what, gives him, the boost.
Well, let's reveal the simple equation. Sandy Alcantara, your National League Cy Young Award winner. And what I want to talk a little about here, not like Sandy Alcantara was great. This was our most spread out vote. Here's our voting distribution. Max Fried finishes second with 13. Zach Gallen 7. Nola 6. Edwin Diaz getting 4 votes. Julio Urias 4 votes. Spencer Strider 3. Carlos Rodon 2. And Kyle Wright 1.
Yeah, real quick, I have the breakdown for Fareed. I had him in second, and then everybody else had him in third, so it kind of just boosted him up there. Zach Gallen, I had him third. Tom had him in second, so it boosted him up there. And then other than that, I don't think we doubled up on any votes.
Nola we did, Diaz we did, Urias was a singles.
Diaz had 2
Rodon.
fourths. Yeah, Diaz had 2 fourths.
But like to get to
Strider.
it, like my number 2 was Aaron Nola. And like if Sandy Alcantara wasn't so good, I would have been tempted to vote Nola as 1. Because Aaron Nola, 205 innings, quality, 10.3 strikeouts per 9, while only walking 1.2 per 9.
Yeah.
He's creating the best swing and miss and called strike CSW percentage of all the starters with 32.4%. So 32.4% of the time he's throwing a pitch, they're looking at it or whiffing at it, which is pretty impressive. Like Aaron Nola, great season. Like he's on a Phillies team that needed it too. And on Fangraphs, him and Carlos Rodon actually led the National League in WAR. Fangraphs WAR, for those that know, is actually very FIP oriented, so that did favor it a little bit. Baseball Reference, I think, still had it fairly similar. Baseball Reference having it. Sandy Alcantara with 8.1 WAR. That's a little bit of a discrepancy. But Aaron Nola with 6, Max Fried with 5.9, and Carlos Rodon with 5.4. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I just think Nola in particular, I think to the naked eye gets what's it called? A lot of disrespect. Just because if you're just going on ESPN or going on, MLB and you just look at his ERA, I mean, to that I think it's just gonna get a lot of hate. I think it was above a 3,
It was a
if I'm correct.
2.74.
Oh, 2.74. Okay, so I mean
Or
it's not
no, sorry,
even
that was his expected. His ERA was a 3.25. His expected was a 2.74.
yeah. So I think to the naked eye it is, I think he will get overlooked, but we kind of threw this out for Shohei. Is the defense behind them? The Phillies are known, for not having the best defense or I guess the fastest defense. You have Bohm at third, who's hit or miss. I mean, none of their guys are really star defenders. So I think that plays a little bit of a factor into Nola, but no, Nola had a great season.
And then Stevs, you went with Kyle Wright getting a vote. What was
Okay.
your thought there?
So my thought process behind, so I did not, I had no idea who I wanted to go for 5. I had no idea. I was looking through their stats, looking through everything, and he had an okay year. Had a 3.19 ERA, over 180.1 innings pitched, right? Which not terrible, not good either. But I was just looking, and a lot of people I was looking, and a lot of people had him on their votes. Like they had him high, um they had him like third and stuff like that. And I didn't really understand it. But I had no idea who I wanted to put at 5, and so that's why I went with Kyle Wright. I think the Braves starting rotation is just so good. You couldn't go wrong picking anyone from their starting rotation.
Okay. And then Tom, where did you fall in like your middle of the range, 2 to 4?
So I picked Gallon for number 2. Just that run that he went on. I don't know if you guys watched those games, but he was just so locked in. And Brad, I know you're a Zach Gallen
Oh yeah.
lover. I watched that pitch. I haven't watched that much of Zach Gallen pitching, surprisingly, for being in the NL West. But I started watching him pitch during that run. I like this guy. I really like this guy. He really can pitch. Like he can shut people down, and he did for what was it like something 50 innings, 52 innings,
48, something around
so I'm like,
there.
yeah, that's what it is. And then I put Fried, Nolan, Strider as my 3, 4, and 5. Honestly, I think that Nolan, Fried should be switched. I don't know why I put Fried above Nola, but Nola should be 3. The fact that Fried, Strider, and Wright are all on this is a little concerning. Just because the NL East, that Braves starting rotation is crazy. But I think you have to include Spencer Strider and in the NL Cy Young, just because he's so young and he's also shutting down batters so well.
The one thing that like turned me off of him was the innings. He only threw 130 innings. So that's kind of why I was against
small
him.
sample size.
But at the time, he still has just as many strikeouts as most of these guys.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Which just shows the dominance in those innings. And I think if you can match the counting stats in less time, I think that it honestly is even more impressive. I think if you try and adjust for innings, then you'll see that Strider is.
That's also a question of like, what are you voting for there? Are you voting for the most valuable pitcher award or the best pitcher award? Because
yeah,
the best pitcher award, Spencer Strider would probably fall in my top 5, but I'm voting the most valuable, and that was Sandy Alcantara. And that's why
true.
I'm on that Aaron Nola train. That's why I'm on the Max Fried train. And that's why I also had Edwin Diaz in there. Like Edwin Diaz and Carlos Rodon are my 4 or 5, because they had like Carlos Rodon was the best pitcher on the Giants starting rotation this year. And he was just consistently like pounding the zone. He's gonna make himself some nice money this offseason. And
Yeah.
Edwin Diaz, like I'm not the biggest FIP person, but his was sub one. He had a sub one FIP. He struck out 17 batters per 9 innings.
Yeah,
Like,
that was definitely for closer seasons, and yet still, I think that I would prefer having Clase over Diaz. And I know I'm a Clase fanboy, but I've watched both of them pitch, and I would definitely feel more comfortable with Clase on the mound. This Diaz, even in such a dominant season, midway through started looking a little bit more shaky and a little bit not like him.
Yeah, no, and here's a quick question. Also, I had Gallon third place. I like him, and he's an interesting uh person this offseason to watch where maybe he possibly gets dealt. I don't know what Arizona's doing.
yes,
Um, uh,
what?
well, I could if somebody offers Arizona an amazing package, I could see them, taking it personally.
No. Arizona's on the brink of becoming a dominant team with
We've
the
discussed about them possibly finishing second next year.
Second?
yeah.
Second in the NL West. They're a fantastic team. They got Corbin Carroll,
Over
Alec
the
Thomas, Ketel
Padres,
Marte.
I don't
I
see
could
him
see it. I
splitting
could see
second.
it.
I couldn't see him winning second over the Padres, but that's for another podcast. Let's get
And
back on
yeah,
track.
I think the Giants are gonna be good. I still see them in play. Anyways, do you think walkout music played a difference in Edwin Diaz this season?
No.
Do you think he kind of got behind
No, I
like
just think
everybody did in the
people got
trumpet?
behind him because of that. I think
Yeah, but
he
I
could have,
think maybe in a way because he's feeding off the energy from the stadium.
yeah.
I
I
guess.
could I could see it.
Anyways,
Let let's
anyways,
let's let's get to MVPs.
yeah,
All right,
and
kicking it off with the American League MVP. It's again two people at the top. Here's the thing. Shohei Ohtani, if he has the type of season he's had the past 2 years, will be the MVP. The only way to beat Shohei Ohtani is to have a historic season. To what degree did Aaron Judge meet that historic season?
I think he crossed the line.
I think it's self-explanatory in all honesty.
I,
I think
I I think
Yeah, I think hitting this many home runs in this day and age, the pitchers over time are becoming more and more competitive.
Better.
It's like that's you can compare to like a historic stat just because the pitching that MLB batters are facing now is leagues harder than the last person to do it. I mean, Roger Maris hit 65, no 60 61, sorry, 61 against pitchers that were not nearly as built as they are today. And the way that pitching mechanics has changed has allowed for more spin and faster fastballs. And that's something that is so much harder to hit. And we're seeing that now. And the fact that he's done day and age is something that is should be recognized for the MVP award.
yeah, and I'd agree. I mean, just breaking the record he did. And we should definitely go into this in another podcast. But then you have Tom. I know you're a Giants fan, and you have Barry Bonds with the NL
Yeah.
record. So I think it's interesting to see how people. I know a lot of people are actually not giving him credit for holding the record, even though he's holding the AL record. People seem to not care that he did this, and that because Bonds did, what, 73
3.
was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
no, but
I
I
don't
think
think
it's
anyone says
hands down.
favorites.
Well, I guess maybe we shouldn't go off of Twitter because Twitter's Twitter, but I think we all four hands down had the same 1, 2, and 3. It looks like.
Yep. So in the Otani debate, right? He was a little bit worse offensively this year, like still top 10 in the league in OPS. I'm not the biggest fan of OPS, but it's a good way. Like you get a good idea by looking at OPS whether someone was good or not.
Yes, I agree with that.
His pitching was fantastic. I voted for him for #1 in the Cy Young Award. And I think after like discussing it, you guys can kind of see where I'm coming from. Like he was so good pitching that it took breaking the American League home run record, having the highest home run plus of all time, comparing the amount of home runs you hit to league average. Aaron Judge, he did it. He had the season that was good enough to break Shohei Ohtani's MVP possibility. And so that gives us the American League MVP, Aaron Judge. Congratulations.
I also think with Shohei though, Shohei is gonna be here for the next 5, plus years. It's just assuming, and hopefully not, but assuming he doesn't get injured. I mean, with the pitching he has and the hitting he has, can he? Hopefully, he can keep it up because that'd be so good for baseball. But he'll be here year after year after year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him bring, in the next 3 years, maybe back to back or back to back to back, um, MVPs.
All right. So before we even go into this, I want to just first recap this for the viewers that are not watching the video. We got Aaron Judge at 20 votes, Shohei at 16, Yordan Alvarez at 12, Jose Altuve at 3, Mike Trout at 3, Jose Ramirez at 3, and Rafael Devers at 2. And there's one here that is not like the others. Real.
Okay.
I'll just take a moment to point and laugh. We have Andres Jimenez.
I don't think you should be pointing and
I
laughing.
don't think
like
you-
if
yeah,
you
no.
read this in order of good season, that's where he falls. It's just that's
Yeah.
not a top.
I don't think you could even say that. I think that everyone here is 2 steps above Andres Jimenez. Jimenez is a star.
If you read the
He's-
best 8 players in the American League,
best 8
it
players in the
goes in this
AL.
order.
I think if you read the best 8 players in the obviously it's not okay. Yes, I'm the one who chose Jimenez, this stat, and I'll get into why in a minute. But if you look at the best 8 players, like Brad just said, in the AL, you go Judge, Ohtani, Alvarez, Altuve, Trout, Ramirez, Devers, and those Altuve, Trout, Ramirez, blah blah blah. They can be switched
Interchanged.
around. Yeah. Devers, and then you have Jimenez, and I think Jimenez is, I mean, at
This
8, I
season.
think, just this season. Now going into why I picked him, honestly, I didn't put too much research into it. I knew he was having a monster season. Just for my brain, I was at work when I made these picks. And I'm gonna be quite frank. And I may or may not have looked at CBS's picks. And they also had him at 5. And since I kind of knew what he was doing this season, Jimenez, what Jimenez was doing this season, I just stuck him in at 5. But I think I'm just trying to give him credit because he did have an awesome season.
I mean, there's definitely there is a point that he had a good season and he would fall in my top 10.
Yeah.
It's just he is not a
Yeah.
top 5 player in the American League
Yeah.
this year.
I don't even think I'm going to argue with this just for a second. I don't want this to go on for too long, but I can argue Corey Seager's better. Xander Bogaerts is better. I would even say I can even argue
I'll
that
give you Bogarts. I don't think Seager had a better season than Jimenez is.
I don't think Bogarts did either.
Bogarts I could give you an argument, but Jimenez had a really good season. I think you're
Podcast idea,
undermining what he did.
controversy topics.
Okay, let me just do this real quick. Andres Jimenez, 364 WOBA, or Xander Bogaerts 363. Andres Jimenez, 140 rated runs created plus. Xander Bogaerts 134. Offensive value, even at 28.7. Defense, Andres Jimenez by 3. WAR, wash. Win probability added, Andres Jimenez 4.36. Xander Bogaerts 0.98. Runs created, produced based on the 24 base outcome. So basically, remember when I mentioned WOBA, how there's the run values per based on the possibilities of the base paths, like nobody on, nobody out, we're on second, 2 outs. Andres Jimenez produced 32.46 runs. Xander Bogaerts produced 19.61.
Yeah, I mean, check out.
There's
I mean-
definitely a case though, Tom. Not a top 5 case. What Aiden was on when he made the list is probably something everyone needs to be on. But there's a case
Trust
that he
me,
is top
trust me,
10.
trust me. No, it's not. No, it's not.
There's a
Low
case. There
sleep,
is a case
low
that he's
sleep
top
work with
10.
the.
There's a case. There's a case that he's a top 10 player, but I wanna step in here for a second, and I think we're really. I had Devers. I'm the lone Devers guy. I had him at 4. And I think we don't talk about Rafael Devers' season. He played very well this season, and no one's really talking about it because of how bad the Red Sox were and how
Well,
underwhelming they were. But
yeah, I would say Bogarts was the best hitter in baseball up until when he got injured. When he got injured, he came back and went like 1 for 50 after that, and from then on, he was a good hitter, but not the best. And I feel like he started the season off so hot. I mean, he was batting like 350, but when that injury came around and he came back, it seemed like everything seemed to fall apart for him. And I was really paying attention to him during that period, but when he came back after that injury, it was just not the same. So for that reason, I think there's just better players, and I think we're also downplaying the season Jose Altuve has had. Honestly, um, even after all the allegations and everything, he's still continuing to dominate.
All right. Now we have a winner. We have a breakdown. Moving on to the one and only National League MVP, and I think this one is not as clear, but pretty clear.
I think this
Do we
one
have?
was more just people had career years. This wasn't
Yep.
like there was one outstanding one. There were just some good players in the National League. Funny enough, 3 of my top 6 or so would be third baseman. I think the third baseman in basically all of the major leagues, they're just a good position. You got Machado, Arenado, you got Austin Riley, you got Jose Ramirez, you got Rafael Devers, you got Alex Bregman. Like, I'm not even listing all of them. Like, that's just
Yeah,
that's probably the most stacked position off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a testament to the fact that they're playing good defense and they're hitting pretty well. Like Manny Machado, Nolan Arenado, they were in my top 5.
Yeah.
Like it's good baseball coming from the third base position. And then we got 2 first basemen in my top 5 as well. You got Freddie Freeman and Paul Goldschmidt.
Yep. The corner infield's running this NL MVP.
Yeah. Where did you guys fall? Like what led you to pick the guy you picked?
Well,
you start off.
yeah, no, real fast. We all had we all had the same first place for the NL MVP. But with that being said, a dominant season really year round. I think he started obviously possibly one of the hottest starts in MLB that we've seen in forever. And then I feel like, Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, he slowed down a bit, obviously, because if he kept that going, that would have been a historic season. But he slowed down a bit, especially towards the end. And in the playoffs, he was basically invisible.
I mean, the whole Cardinals offense was visible in the playoffs.
But no, Tom, you wanna take this handoff because we all had the same person, but he was just. I think just the beginning of the season kind of set him up that he would have had to do something awful in the second half for him not to win this.
Yeah, and it's honestly one of the least interesting MVPs I've seen. You really like seeing like flashy players, but I mean, a first baseman, Goldschmidt, he just was consistently the best hitter in the league. And I believe me and Brad had similar top 5. Brad, correct me if I'm right, but did you have Goldschmidt, Machado, Arenado, Sandy, Alcantara, and Freeman in no particular order in your top 5?
Those were my top 5, yeah.
Yeah, we had the same top 5. I don't know if we have the same order because I just read randomly, but it seems like we're all relatively on the same page for this one. But Stes, give me your top 5, and then we can get into the actual ordering.
So I had Goldschmidt. I actually had Freeman over Arenado over Machado. Um, because I thought Freeman had a really good year, but it's just kind of like Freeman always he's Freddie Freeman. He always has a good year, right? Even in Dodgers blue, he's gonna have a good season. He's Freddie Freeman. But I think he had a better season than Machado did, so I voted him over Machado. And then I had Arenado and Trey Turner to finish out. Probably a little bit of bias at the end there, but what are you gonna do?
I mean, Trey Turner, like the thing with him is he didn't grade out defensively fantastically this year.
Yeah.
We saw in the postseason, this doesn't count towards this voting, but we saw in the postseason, like he really did make a couple of really big errors. And that kind of happened all year. He even tried at one point to just position himself differently to appeal the defensive run saved, which is like it is determined by one person. Like a defensive run saved is like someone's watching it like, oh, he saved a run. There's a defensive run saved. But it grades better based on where you stand. Trey Turner has the speed. Like he runs the bases so well and it's just such an advantage because of his speed. Like he's beating out more infield singles than almost anyone in the league besides Bobby Witt.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm ready to see the answer for this one. It might not be a shocking one, but I'm ready to see the actual point scoring here.
So we had Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt won the National League MVP, and it's so underwhelming.
Yeah,
Like,
it really is. Or it's just a really boring one. I mean, you really like watching flashy gloves, stolen
What
bases, but this guy was just the slugging is crazy this season. And he just continued that the whole time.
on both
w-
Baseball
w-
Reference and Fangraphs, Machado, or excuse me, not Machado, Arenado and Goldschmidt were like neck and neck in war. Arenado 7.3 to Goldschmidt 7.1 on Fangraphs, but on Baseball Reference 7.9 Arenado to 7.8 Goldschmidt. And I didn't want to let WAR tell the full story of what I thought my my vote was going to be. And Goldschmidt's offense was a lot better than Nolan Arenado's. And I think that it really came down to the fact that the Cardinals' offense wouldn't have been what it would have been if Paul Goldschmidt, or what it was, had Paul Goldschmidt not been doing what he did.
when was the last time we had two players on the same team? I mean, this could very easily be, what MLB puts out, but let's just say it is, and it actually is Goldschmidt Arenado. When was the last time we had two, 1-2 on the same team?
Um,
Trying to think.
I mean, we had the rookie of the year today was Strider and Harris.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about like MVP, like I feel like Rookie of the Year is obviously impressive to have two, but
I could not tell you that off the top of my head.
Yeah, like it's
I
a
just
very impressive feat
yeah,
for a
it's
team to have
impressive.
that.
And
Yeah, I
then
think
they both went on milk cartons to begin the playoffs.
I mean, for
yeah.
the entire playoffs.
I mean,
Yeah.
Arenado known to be more of a streaky player. I feel like Arenado's highs are way higher than Goldschmidt's regular, but Goldschmidt stays the same. I mean, Arenado was someone that won Player of the Month twice this year. You don't see that often. You don't see someone win Player of the Month twice, other than Aaron Judge, obviously, but he who actually won 3 times. But still, he's very streaky. He would go dormant for a month and then come back and be absolutely dominant. And I think if Arenado had the consistency of Goldschmidt, it would be no question Arenado MVP. But Goldschmidt is able to just, and I saw an interview with Goldschmidt. He literally does not check his stats. He doesn't go on the internet. I don't know what he does for fun, but he doesn't do that stuff. He doesn't know what his stats are. So I don't even
Not
know if
take COVID vaccines.
Watch his paint dry.
that too. He
Um,
literally does not know what he's doing. And I think that also helps him mentally prepare for games because he's not worried about anything. But it seems like Arenado is a lot more stress oriented, I guess. I mean, he's someone that is a lot more streaky. You look at streaks. Arenado went on 2 huge streaks this year and then disappeared for 2 months as well. While Goldschmidt, I think, was over 300 every month. It's all about consistency, and that's what won this MVP for Goldschmidt here.
and Aiden, to answer your question earlier, the last two teammates to finish first and second in the MVP race was Jeff Kent And Barry Bonds in 2000.
That's why
Wow.
he's
22 years ago. And another question: what did that 2000 Giants team do?
I don't
Hey,
remember. Probably
hey,
nothing important.
Nothing. Okay. No,
Not winning the
I
World
just
Series. I know that for a
World
fact.
Series was Mets Yankees that year, so
so yeah. I guess maybe it's not good to have two in the top. 2-1-2.
I would
It's
take two MVPs on my
I
team.
would I would take two MVPs
bad
too.
juju. It's bad
No,
juju.
I mean,
it's whether you have a supporting cast around them. And the Cardinals really did on the defensive side and in their bullpen, but at the end of the day, their starting rotation just wasn't top tier. Like you started Jose Quintana in a playoff game. Like he pitched pretty good in that game too. He went 5 1/3 scoreless. It's just he was not who you want to be starting in a postseason game.
Yeah. Well, I mean that wraps up everything, right? So I mean, for the most part, I think we agreed on the correct player. Unless we're talking about NL Cy Young, which was absolutely chaotic. It seems like we were all relatively on the same page.
Yeah.
Just to recap, I think we all agreed on Judge for AL MVP, Goldschmidt for NL MVP, Justin Verlander for AL Cy Young, Sandy Alcantara for NL
We
Cy
do
Young.
not agree on Verlander, sir.
we
Well,
didn't agree,
so,
but that was who ended up winning.
the highest vote,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. AL Rookie of the Year was voted for Julio Rodriguez. NL was Strider. AL was Hyde, and NL was Rob Thompson. Correct?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Hmm.
All right. So thank you guys for joining us today. If you like this style of podcast with the PowerPoint or the visuals that kind of like guide us through, let us know. Give us some feedback. Let us know on Instagram. You can follow us at the 4A podcast. Follow us on YouTube where this will be live. You have our faces for the first time. You have our visuals. Thank you all for listening. Have a great one. Goodbye.